You know that feeling when you scroll through a mountain of camera listings, see those glossy sample shots, read the hype about cinematic color science and unlimited recording, and then you finally click buy only to end up with a body that feels more like a compromise than a solution? I've been there, especially with the full-frame cinema cameras that promise the look of a Hollywood rig but often leave you juggling heat, battery drains, or a menu maze that feels like it was designed for engineers, not storytellers. If you're on the fence about stepping up from a mirrorless hybrid to a dedicated cinema-grade box, this review is going to help you avoid that mistake. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about what makes the Sony Alpha FX3 stand out in a crowded field. It's marketed as the compact cage-free option in Sony's cinema line, and that really matters if you're the type who wants a lightweight rig that you can actually handhold for a minute or two without a full-size cage. The body itself is roughly the size of a regular A7 series mirrorless, but Sony has added a handful of mounting points, 20 in total, including a top handle that accepts an XLR adapter. That means you can bolt on a microphone, a monitor, a follow focus, or a small LED without turning the thing into a Frankenstein. In real-world shoots I've seen, indie filmmakers appreciate being able to add a shotgun mic and a small monitor in under 5 minutes, then head straight into a tight apartment or a cramped hallway. The fact that you don't have to build a cage around it saves both weight and setup time, which directly translates into more usable shooting minutes. Now, the core of any camera is its sensor and the way it handles light. The FX3 uses a full-frame 4K sensor that Sony claims delivers over 15 stops of dynamic range and high sensitivity. In practice, that means you can push the ISO into the 6,400 to 12,800 range and still retain usable detail in the shadows, which is a huge win for low-light gigs like nighttime street interviews or indoor events where you don't have the luxury of a full lighting rig. I've seen footage shot at a dimly lit jazz club where the FX3 kept the skin tones natural and the instrument highlights crisp without a lot of noise, thanks to that high-sensitivity sensor. The S-Cinetone picture profile, inspired by Sony's Venice cinema camera, gives you a more filmic color palette straight out of the camera. Think softer highlights and a richer mid-tone roll-off. That's a practical benefit because it reduces the amount of grading you need to do in post if you're after that cinematic look right away. Autofocus is another pain point for many creators moving from stills to video. Sony's fast hybrid AF system is now paired with real-time tracking and real-time IAF that works in 4K 120p. In my tests, the focus stayed locked on a moving subject like a skateboarder weaving through a park without hunting, even at 120 frames per second. That confidence is a game-changer for solo shooters who can't afford a focus puller. However, there's a caveat. The autofocus can occasionally get confused in low-contrast scenes, such as a person in a dark hoodie against a similarly dark background. In those moments, you'll want to fall back on manual focus or add a little light to give the system something to latch onto. Stabilization on the FX3 is purely in-body, 5-axis sensor shift, which works well for handheld shots up to about a 2-stop advantage. When I paired it with Sony's 2470mm f/2.8G Master, the footage stayed remarkably steady while walking over uneven terrain, which is handy for documentaries or run-and-gun style productions. The downside is that the system isn't as aggressive as some dedicated gimbals, so for extreme motion, think running or aggressive run-and-gun, adding a small gimbal will still be advisable. Let's talk about the lens ecosystem. Because the FX3 uses Sony's mount, you have immediate access to a huge library of full-frame lenses, ranging from budget primes to high-end G Masters. That flexibility is a strong point for creators who already own a few Sony lenses. You can simply slot them into the FX3 and start shooting. On the other hand, if you come from a Canon or Nikon background, you'll need an adapter, and while Sony's adapters are solid, they add a bit of extra bulk and a potential point of failure. For most users, though, the native lens lineup is a practical advantage that keeps the system versatile without forcing you into a new glass investment. Menu navigation is an area where many cinema cameras trip up, and the FX3 is no exception. Sony's menu hierarchy is deep, And while the recent UI updates have made it more touch-friendly, you still spend a few seconds scrolling through layers to change a custom picture profile or toggle the fan. The fan is a double-edged sword. It keeps the sensor cool for unlimited 4K 60p recording, which is fantastic if you're shooting long takes, but